Hello, I'm Paul Briley, and you're listening to Off the Comma. On this podcast, we explore all facets of what it means to feel stuck in life. We talk with people just like us who have found themselves sitting on a comma and not knowing where to go next. We'll unpack the experience, where they felt stuck, what they experienced, and what they learned. My goal is to inspire you by seeing yourself in others and finding possibility for yourself. Let's get into this week's conversation. All right, everybody, we are back. Another exciting episode of Off the Comma. Very excited to be able to be here every week and to be able to, just be a part of all of these really exciting conversations and to be able to witness the storytelling and to be able to also take a little bit of insight away from each and every one of these conversations that we have every week. And I'm really excited to continue to feed into this community of storytellers that we have. This week is no exception. In just a moment, I'm going to let Raymond introduce himself, but this week, Raymond is another one of the many, many guests who we haven't had a chance to meet yet. We're going to be meeting today through the telling of Raymond's story. I'm looking forward to learning about Raymond through his story and seeing what insights are going to be in here for me to carry away, as well as for all of you. So with that said, I'm going to stop rambling, Raymond, and let's just jump in. Raymond, why don't you introduce yourself? And as we do with every guest, why don't we start with how would you like to be known? And then anything else that you'd like to share with the audience?
That's such an interesting question. And I I think I'd like to be known as authentic. And because of that, because I get asked this quite a bit. And so I rely on going back to, I'm going to tell you what the Briggs Myers says about me as a character.
Okay.
And that's revealing because it says I score very high in openness, extraordinarily high in openness,
Mm,
extraordinarily high on disagreeableness, and extraordinarily high in conscientiousness. So that tells me I'm very open to new ideas. I love to experiment and to find out new things. I am the first one to jump down a rabbit hole. Christmas dinner last night was filled with anecdotes and conspiracy theories and what everyone's doing. There's nothing off the table. But
mm,
the other part about the disagreeableness is that I do have my own bright lines. I have my own ethical standards. And
mm,
so when I reach up against those, sometimes that corrals openness, and at the same time, openness, disagreeableness can also be that I don't want to hear. Sometimes I have to be told, you're not going to do this, and this is why. I have to hear that
mm,
explanation. So that's
mm.
me. And then lastly is I'm extraordinarily conscientious, and that moderates both of those things. And so I just if I was going to be known by anybody who did not hear that, they'd say, well, you know what I know about this guy? If he says he's going to do something, it's going to get done. And if he says he's
Mm,
not going to do something, he's not going to do that. And
mm.
so I think if I was going to talk about who I am, that's who I am as an individual.
Nice. I want to jump in and just kind of reflect some of what I heard. And throughout our conversation today, Raymond, if I misreflect anything at any point in time, please correct me. But I love that you referred to the Myers-Briggs, and I'm a big kind of I geek out on the personality type assessments and the communication type assessments, and I hear you, right? Like I hear the words you use to describe and kind of these types and traits. And it's interesting because I kind of relate to that a little bit because what I'm also believing I'm hearing is insightful and curious because the sheer fact that you've even taken this assessment, it sounds like you're very interested in learning about yourself. And like you were describing with the disagreeableness, it's like you kind of have your own compass, your own inner compass that you use to drive you. And I can definitely relate to that as well.
And that can be very beneficial, but I think that's something that I'm on guard against all the time is that
Mm,
my compass can be wrong.
mm,
In fact, the first question I ask myself when something goes wrong, even when I was leading large groups of people, and the largest group of people I was in charge of was about 450 people, and somebody could be 5 or 6 layers away from me and something could go wrong. And first question I would ask is, what's my part? What did I do?
mm.
What did I fail to do? What should I do? I have this huge debrief that goes on inside of my head. So yes, the
It's
these internal questions, I think as we get older, it seems to me I reflect more on what I do, then I think other people are reflecting on what I
Mm.
do.
Hence the conscientiousness, right?
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to seeing how some of these traits and descriptors show up in your story. Before, in a second, we get into our five kind of core questions for the episode today. Anything else you want people to know, just by way of introduction, brief introduction,
Well, yeah,
hobbies,
sure.
interests, work?
So I've retired three times. The first time was 22 years ago. I retired as a police lieutenant from the Los Angeles Police Department. Then I went to work at university. I taught at a couple of universities for about 12 years. Then I opened my own consulting company. I thought I had wound it down this year and retired, but then I got a client that contacted me with a really interesting looking job. And I thought, well, just because it's interesting, I think I'll do that. I actually
Mm,
went back to school recently to start my fourth career. And I have one more. I have to do the internship part of it. I've done all the courses to become a personal trainer. I want to teach men my age, men in their
mm,
70s. My one rep max in the bench is 325 pounds, and so I want to teach men my age to lift weights. Um, I have five children and nine grandchildren. I'm currently the chair of the local chamber of commerce, the president of the Rotary Foundation in town, and the officers coach for the Masonic Lodge. So I'm engaged in my community and with my family and way
mm.
work.
No, it sounds like no shortage of interests, motivation, drive, and kind of pursuit of being active and engaged, right?
Yeah.
Raymond, before we jump into the five questions, one thing I ask every guest as we kind of get started in the episode is, as you think ahead to the next 35, 40 minutes or so of telling your story, what intention would you have for yourself today?
Yeah, part of my story is going to be how I got to where I was stuck. And so I happen to believe that a great part of my process, my creative process, is thinking on my feet. And so
Mm,
I will do that will be maybe a live lecture with a short outline or a group presentation or something where I want to work out an idea. And sometimes working out an idea in front of an audience is the best way for me to do it. And
mm.
so to me, there is an audience here, and it's not just you. And so it will be my opportunity to work out some things in my own head. And so that's what I get out of it.
Okay. I hear your intention, and my intention today is to support you in that intention, obviously creating the space for you to be able to tell your story and to share with us. But also that in there will be people out there who hear your story and they will see a little bit of themselves in you and the story you tell us today, that will make people feel maybe a little bit more connected, a little bit less alone, and in the best of cases, maybe even inspired or empowered to go out and do something they've been wanting to do.
But I certainly hope so.
Nice. Well, then let's just jump right in and let's see where it unfolds. So, question one of our five questions, Raymond, is where in your life have you found yourself sitting on a comma?
I think you said a comma, and I thought, boy, I felt more like I was at a semicolon because I
Mm,
had really two conjoined thoughts going on at the same time, and neither of them could get completed. And I didn't
mm,
know it at the time. The first was I've written now nine books, but I had written seven. And I always wanted to write fiction for two purposes. The first is that I have lots of stories in my head, but fiction, I'm a great technical writer. Part of what I do business wise is I write reports and I do analysis of people. And I'm a good writer. I can communicate a high number of ideas to the fewest number of words possible.
mm.
I'm very careful with the English language, especially when I'm writing. If I prepared for speaking, also that too. But so I'm a good technical writer, but I want to write fiction, which is way different, right?
Hmm.
I'm also a musician, a classically trained musician. And during the pandemic, I taught myself to play jazz. I don't play it very well, but you can learn different things, right? You can learn different genres or different styles within whatever your strength is. And so I wanted to learn fiction. And I always had these jobs I always wanted to do as a kid. So I had reached a lull in the consulting work. And I thought, there's two things I always wanted to do. Well, three things. One was garbage truck driver,
Mm.
because that was so different when I was a kid. That was like treasure hunting. And the other was cab driver and movie usher. And, you know, all of those things have a common thread when you think about them. But then Uber had just started up. It had just begun. And so we're going back now 10 years ago. And I thought, well, this is like cab driving. I wonder what this is like. And
Hmm.
so I signed up, and after the first ride, I go, okay, you know what I can use this for? Because the first ride was funny. And I thought, well, I can learn to write fiction with this because I can gather stories and then I can set the scene and I can write the dialogue and I'll have something real to fall back on. And then I can show you, the reader, and I can develop the style. And from there, this will be my bridge book. And
Mm,
so I started driving, and by the pandemic comes along, it stops that whole thing after 5 years. And
mm,
I had the title of the book, and I sat down to first transcribe all the stories. Because what I would do is, if something unusual happened, before I'd go back on the app, I would record it on the phone verbally, then I would transcribe it later, get little transcriptions together. And I did the first cut at the book, and about 110,000 words, and it was just garbage, Paul. I
mm.
read this, I'm like, this is really bad, man. It's
Now, out of curiosity, if I may interrupt for just a moment, why do you say it was garbage? Because a lot of people are going to make a lot of different assumptions, and they're probably all right. But what was your reason for calling it garbage?
it was the stories were great, and they needed to be polished up. I could see that I wasn't setting the scene properly in some of these stories, and it needed to be done. Number two is, because the stories were so different, the voice was changing. The voice I
Mm,
was using to write in was dependent upon how it's over a 5 year period of time. So I'm kind of
yeah.
transcribing what's going on. The third is that I tried to do these chronologically, and it just came out as a series of stupid stories. And because Uber was in its beginning phases, I was in there with Uber was doing really stupid stuff, and it was being very disruptive. So there were long passages that were nothing but rants against Uber. And so I'm like,
Mm,
well, that's all got to be cut out. So I then that's the first thing is what I'll do is, okay, let's put this away for a few days and I'll sit it over there and do something else and then come back to it. And then I edit it again. And the third pass, it's still garbage. I'm a year into a year and a half trying to write this. And at that point, I'm also starting up another project at that time. Well, actually, I had a leadership book I was working on, but I'm starting another project I really wanted to do. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to do something I often do. I often
hmm
make two assumptions about things. The first assumption is that it's not time for that thing. It's not time. This is very Carl Jungian in that, the idea of synchronicity, that things occurring in time have significance based on that time. And so it's not time. It's not timely. There's something about this not timely. Number two is, my subconscious is very keen and powerful, and it's telling me it's not time yet. There's something needs to be done to this. You have not seen consciously yet, so stop and wait. And so many times I'll just say it's not time, and I'll tell
mm,
myself this is not time. I don't know why it's not time. And so and we'll talk, I think, in the second part about how you get off this area, because I'll get here frequently. It's one way also to address this. There's no such thing, by the way, as writer's block. That's just crazy talk.
mm,
Real writers don't get writer's block. They have bad days of writing and they write garbage, but they don't.
mm,
You don't stand at the. If you're sitting and staring at a blank sheet of paper, you need to go take a walk. Um,
mm. So
uh,
it's a reframe, right? It's there's no such thing as block. It's just you need to like go with the flow and the energy is what I think I'm hearing you say.
well, you can also be afraid,
Mm,
and a story writing. And I had this discussion with my wife. I said, with this was just recently. Writers are the dogs of the artist world. We are the lowest form of artist, and you don't realize that. Do you know that if you have a single image as a painter or a photographer, I can't use it without your permission. If you're a musician, you write a song, I can't use, I think it's 2 or 4 bars without your permission.
mm,
If I'm a writer, you can use up to 25% of my work with attribution. That's not
mm,
permission. You can just take a quarter of it and say, I got this from Raymond Foster. Isn't this neat? Um, and so we don't have the same protections in that way. And also people don't think of writers as artists. They think of them
hmm
as writers because everybody can write. And they think, well, all you do is write, right?
Yeah.
How hard can that be?
I may have thrown you off a little bit too, though, because you were kind of heading down the path of what sounded like a little bit of a learning, which is you said, that it's not time for that thing, and that you started trusting in it's not time, it's time to go for a walk. I just wanted to kind of check back in with where you were headed with that thread.
Yeah, so what happens with this book is I set it aside. I do give it, I will pay people to read it. I paid a lady to read the book, and I think she wrote very nice on the outside.
Mm,
I hate the word nice. So I thought, well, let's just set this aside for a while. So the other project I was working on is was an analysis of the ritual of Freemasonry and all the symbolism. And I had begun to give Masonic education inside the lodges to the brothers. And the first time I did this, it was dismal. I was I it was I went too esoteric and I went too deep on it. And I got golf claps. No, this is nice. Thank you for showing up. I thought,
mm,
wow, man, they didn't get a thing I said, and I'm a really good public speaker, and this is really good information. This just didn't work. So I thought, well, I need to reframe this exploration. And so what I did was, and much of the Masonic rituals based in the King James Version of the Bible. And so what I did was I then founded everything instead of going back to Aristotle and Plato and diving deep into Eastern, how does the Hindi come out and Buddha comes out and all the Masonic work? Let's go back and get where these men live. They live in this Christian world, and let's frame everything we do in these lessons. So I began to do these lessons in lodge, and after about 6 months, I was invited to other lodges. And indeed, I will be given an award in 2020 for giving Masonic education. I'll become Mason of the Year for the entire state of California based on this education I'm giving. Because people are, it's kind of in demand now.
hmm
So as I do these lessons, and all I wanted to do at the time was to develop a core thing of lessons. And
hmm
it's right here. I don't want to pull it out, but I have these 6-inch binders, the 6-inch ones, the big tall ones. I have
hmm
three of them filled with outlines. So within
mm,
4 years, I've got all this research I've done. So I began to write essays on my blog, and these essays are pretty well received. And I thought, well, there's a book here. So about this time last year, I have all this research and I have all these essays. I go, you know what? Let's not, well, no, it was earlier than this. This is about this time of year when I finish. So it's summer of last year, but year before last, 2024. I start to write seriously on this book on Masonic education and Freemasonry. And
hmm
the target is not only Masons, but people who are outside the fraternity who might be interested in Freemasonry. So they'll understand, Benjamin Franklin, who was a Mason, said the biggest secret about Freemasonry is there's no secret. And that's true.
mm,
So the only thing I wouldn't write about was our modes of recognition, which is our secret handshakes and passwords, and the actual words we use in some instances. So I write this book and I'm really into this. By January of this year, 2025, I'm completed. I have 450 pages. I have over 100,000 words, 240 some sources. This is a wonderful scholarly piece because it's right in my wheelhouse, right? This is what I do for a
hmm
living. It's what I do well. This is a great book. And I send it off to the first person I use as a grammar editor. And the grammar editor says to me, who's read everything I've ever written, said, "This is the finest work you've ever done. This work is incredible. This is going to make a difference in the world." I get all this. I'm like, wow, I had fun with it. I didn't realize it was that great. But Paul, I don't have a title for it.
mm.
I don't have a title for this book. And so I'm like, oh my goodness. So I got to set this aside. But now I've got two complete books, January this year, right?
Well,
One, one's not structured, and one doesn't have a title.
okay. Well, I mean, obviously you're going to continue. I know there's a lot more story to tell here, but I'm curious. You're talking about these two books and your experience with these two books. I am curious if it doesn't take us sideways. What was your motivation? What were you wanting to gain out of completing these books or any books?
That's a really good question. When my first book arrived, when that came 20 years ago, it came in a big box.
hmm
But it came with like 20 of them from Prentice Hall, the Pearson Education published that. When it came, everyone was excited except me.
Mm,
It was anticlimactic. See, the book had been in my head for 3 years.
hmm
And when it finally came to the doorstep, it was just a it was a physical manifestation of something I'd already seen in my head. It was just as real to me in my head. So
Mm.
part of what I'm doing is I've got these things in my head and I want to get them out. And once they're out of my head, I don't have to think about them anymore. So part of it's driving me as person. This is also going to, when we see this story, how I resolve this problem, because now I'm on the comma here, what
Mm.
you would say. You'll see how I resolve this, or how it resolves. I don't know that I do it. And that's part of my process too. But I can see you
Okay.
had a question.
Well, no, I wanted to acknowledge something and then self-reference for a moment. So what I'm hearing you say is one probably of maybe many or several motivation is the process in itself. Like it's almost like giving life to or giving birth to or the creation process in and of itself of bringing it from one place to another, mindset to or mind to page, right, is part of what you enjoy, and then when that process is done it's like complete, move on.
But a book is like a child.
Mm.
Um, the conception, the idea is the fun part. That's the sex, right? That's
Mm-hmm.
the fun part. Everything else is getting it out. And that I just got a royalty check on a book I wrote 22 years ago. I got a royalty check for $49. Now,
Mm.
$49 ain't a lot of money, but in fact, I still have to account for it. I got to deposit it. I got to report it to the accountant. I still have to care for the book, and it's 20 years old. So it really is
Mm-hmm.
adult. It's an adult child. These other books, one of the things I'm doing for the books as part of the marketing process are these podcasts. I began public speaking after the first of the year. And that's keeping me from writing because these other books deserve the marketing aspect of it
Mm-hmm.
that you have to do. So that's part of their toddlers in essence when they need a lot of supervision. Once I
Mm-hmm.
get them past the toddler stage where there's some reviews on Amazon and that people are already talking about them, I've done about everything I can do. They're in school and I can, occasionally got to check in with them, but they're so yes, there's a whole process to this and it's very much like a creation process.
Yeah.
So
Okay. Well, go ahead and continue because I know you were heading towards kind of like where and how this ultimately was going to lead to getting off the comma, and then I'll jump in with the second of our five questions here in just a moment. But continue with your story.
okay, so I have two books. One I don't have a title for, which is a great book. I have one book that's trash.
Mm.
And I realize as I go back to the book, and the first thing I did was I go, okay, well, let's be clever about the book without a title. Let's run the whole manuscript through artificial intelligence and ask it questions and see what it can help me.
Mm.
So I ask it to tell me what's the first obvious question. What's the most common word in the give me the 20 most common words in the manuscript. Well, of course, it comes up with a, the, is. I'm like, okay, I'm an
Oh
idiot. Yeah, I got to know that it can't understand what I'm asking. I've got to ask what
Right.
I need, right? So, okay, now I'm learning. Now I'm learning. All right, okay, well, let's try nouns. Let's try verbs. Let's go with, let's go with adverbs. So it starts kicking out words and I'm looking at it and I'm rereading it and I realize, okay, well, my whole theme has always been that, masonry is a transformational experience and it's building, and we use King Solomon's temple as a metaphor to discuss the symbols and the different things the lessons that we can learn. Oh, we're building the temple within us. And so the temple within, the title's born. And then I look over at the notebook that um, has the other book, and I go, oh no, I know what the problem is. The problem is there's no story arc in the Chasing the Surge in the Uber book. There's no story arc in that because I'm avoiding the story arc. I'm avoiding it.
Mm.
I'm because the story arc is me. See, it's not a collection of stories, it's a memoir. And because it's a memoir, it's telling my transformation. Because remember, when I started driving Uber, I'm essentially about a 60-year-old retired police lieutenant who's now going to take drunk knuckleheads around through the city of Los Angeles at night. So I'm going to revisit everywhere I've been as a police officer. And that career was much different. If you had a problem as a policing is pretty simple. People call you when there's a problem. You come to the location where there's chaos because of the problem. You create order by implementing a solution that you come up with. If people don't like your solution, you force them to adopt it. All right.
Mm.
That's what
Mm.
the police do. Um, but you can't do that in an Uber, right? You
Right.
have to have a whole bunch of other skills. And so you can see, I go, oh, I'm changing. I then
Mm,
sat down and within 2 weeks had rewritten this thing. And I had pared it down from the original 100,000 to about just over 60,000 words.
mm,
And then the story arc is not chronological at all because it's transformational. So now things like foreshadowing and hyperbole and all these, reflection, they all come into play because it's a memoir now. And
mm,
because it's a memoir about my transformation as a human being, as the driver. And the title changes from Chasing the Surge to Chasing the Surge 10,000 Rides into the American Night because I did 10,000 rides. And
mm.
so just the reframing of the title creates a different expectation on the reader, and then it helped me to write the book and to accomplish what I wanted to accomplish. And so they both had to work together. Both books pushed each other. That's
Okay. Let me jump into the second question and by all means continue to tell the story as it relates, but just kind of a moment to reflect on a little bit of a different thought here. Question two is, as you look back at this comma that you were sitting on, what did it create for you?
well, it created two books. I mean, I think that they both um, it reinforced, I guess, what I already know to be true about the creative process as far as how I experience it. It also, because I strongly believe in how we program our subconscious, there were times when I got away from doing what I should have been doing as far as trying to get my subconscious to work for me. I was getting sidetracked. Um,
Mm,
I wanted to write fiction. I should have been focused on writing that book, I think.
mm,
And so those things I fell back into what I know works, and then I was able also to expand upon that. There are several chapters in the Temple Within which describe my work with my own subconscious, and it's kind of hidden in there. It's plainly spoken, but it doesn't talk about me directly. And so this idea of me working with my own subconscious and working with the collective unconscious, if you will, so that I can draw things out. That's what I should have fallen back on originally. But I don't think I could have got there had I not done. Had I don't think either book would have ever worked had I not worked on the other one.
mm. Well, it's interesting because now, I'm completely an outsider. You and I haven't talked about any of this before our conversation today. But what I believe I'm seeing, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, is a couple of things that just are coming up for me. One, there's one book that sort of you called to, and another book that called you, right? And then almost like there's the books for the sake of the books, and then there's the books for the sake of the process that it was taking you through, which is very much what I believe I'm hearing you describe. As the books were a product in themselves, but they were also part of a bigger process, something that was going on with you.
Yes, they both reflect something that was going on with me. Um, I will tell you that the Temple Within is such a solid piece of scholarly work. I think that I'm very pleased with it. The other Chasing the Surge book, I'm like, I don't know what the reviews are when people write reviews. I
Hmm.
don't know how that will be accepted. I don't know. It's a good book. It
Hmm.
has some great stories in it. I did get some feedback, which I thought was interesting. One of the readers said, well, at this part it slows down and it really kind of drags here for about 8 or 10 pages. And I started laughing to myself because that's what I wanted to happen
Hmm.
because most of Uber driving is boring and slow and stupid and there's nothing to do. It's not all excitement. And I wanted the
Yeah.
reader to feel a little bit of that, but I didn't say it in the transcript. I don't say that in the book. So somebody will, and then I thought, well, see, maybe that's too sophisticated. In other words,
Mm.
somebody's going to say, this is poor writing. This is really boring.
Hmm.
This slows down. I mean, it continues to move, but it slows, and you feel how everything's fast paced, and all of a sudden it slows down. And I wanted you to feel that. Maybe I should have reflected it somehow to tell you that's what you were supposed to feel, but then that felt like I was doing too much.
or it's interesting what comes up for me because I have a similar experience with this podcast specifically, right? Is maybe not so much, and I'm not trying to tell you what to do, but like it's perhaps the invitation is not so much what to feel, but to be aware of what you feel when you feel it, right? Like with this podcast, I mean, not every episode is meant for every person, right? And I have people sometimes who are, oh, I loved this and I love that person, I love this episode. And I've had people say, oh, I tried to listen to that one and I just couldn't, I had to
Yeah.
stop after a couple of minutes. I'm like, well, then it wasn't for you. That wasn't your story, right? And so, but that's not what I'm hearing you describe with your book, is somebody was into it and then they noticed a change in themselves or their own reaction in the process. And isn't that kind of the point? I mean, my understanding of writers is that it is to take you on a journey.
Yeah, to me, and I think about this, I was a win. That's what I wanted to happen. But so they experienced it, but they didn't see it,
Mm,
and so, you worry about they experienced it, but they didn't realize they experienced it. And so could I have written it somehow differently? I
hmm.
think about that. That's the thing, you got to walk. Once you publish a book, you got to walk away from it.
Yeah. Well, I want to come back to something you said earlier, though, because you said it a couple of times, and I didn't take the opportunity to jump into it. So you said something to the effect of these books kind of depended on each other. Like I had to be writing. What I heard was I had to be writing both of them in order for either of them to come to life. Say more. In what ways did those books depend on each other, and in what ways did you depend on the both books beyond what you've already shared with us?
So I think that, well, let's take the one that the Chasing the Surge, the Uber book. The Uber book is sitting there, and it is. I've tried to fix this a couple of times, and I don't know what's wrong with it, but I know something's wrong with it.
Mm,
And so it's sitting there, and I'm reflecting, reflecting, reflecting. I'm trying to figure it out. So I start working on the other book, and the other book is about personal development, an inward journey of using these tools to refine your character, to refine your life, to refine your creative abilities. And so those I spend the entire time I'm doing the research, I'm giving the lectures, I'm developing the outlines, I'm developing the essays. I finally write the book. I'm also learning all this material. I'm inculcating it myself, right?
hmm.
I am becoming better with the tools that we talk to Masons about using. And so I'm becoming better with these tools. And so had I not had all these tools, I would not have been able to reflect back and see what was wrong with Chasing the Surge. And
Mm,
had I not been driven to continue to write by Chasing the Surge, I may not have got to the Temple Within. And I think that's why the title of Temple of Within hung in my head. It hung way back in here, waiting, because it's going, no, I'm not going to tell you that secret until you figure this other piece out. And as
mm,
soon as I figured them both out at the same time, they came up like that. And so I do believe that, subconsciously I was working something out in my head. Um, and I will say that, um, this is one of those things that part of what I was learning was more moderation on that disagreeableness part of me.
mm,
Because this has come up actually recently, in things for other organizations that I am either a leader in or a key or a part in. Um, I'm more and more deciding that even though I'm right, being right is not worth all the trouble it's causing me.
mm,
And so, and that's a can be a fine-tuned place, because sometimes being right, um, you have to absolutely stick to it and suffer the consequences of being right. Because
mm,
there are consequences to being on the right side at the wrong time.
mm,
And there's two things going on. I can't this part of what I do in masonry is I'm what's called a trial master, and so I will be involved in trials of unmasonic conduct of some of the brothers. I'm involved in something right now that I'm right. I'm actually representing a guy. And I'm right, and I have to. And this is very difficult. I'm losing sleep over this because it's so difficult. There have been other instances where in like with the Chamber of Commerce, and I'm just like, well, the right thing to do is this, but it's not worth the disharmony it's going to cause.
mm,
Or is there a way that I can show other people slowly what the right thing to do is and let them discover it and they do the right thing and I'll just step back and not say anything about it. And
Mm.
so I think that The Temple Within was a good book for me to write because I've grown as a human being. And when you get to your seventh decade and you're going, oh man, I have a lot to learn. It's a
Hmm.
pretty good place, right?
Well, and I self-referencing, absolutely, I can relate to that, and I'm grateful for the fact that in my 50s I'm still learning, able to admit that I'm learning, pursuing learning. What you're describing through kind of some of your self-observations and in writing the book was very similar to what we learn in our coach training, for example, is the being able to notice when I have this need to be right and why do I need to be right and learning how to be able to accept not being right and just kind of being able to kind of remove yourself a little bit and watch things as they flow and be more of an observer than a participant or a player, it seems.
Well, I'll tell you, there's one other thing that this has been a I will keep this till the day I die as a primary precept of my life. Whatever's going on now is setting me up for the next adventure.
Hmm.
Um,
Mm.
I am being given, maybe my subconscious, maybe the universe, maybe God sees something in the future for me that I need to do or that I'm going to experience. And I'm be giving tools right now. So I always ask myself the question. And when you reflect back on your life, you'll see that, man, if I didn't know this, I couldn't have done that. And if I didn't know that part, if I hadn't gone through this, I wouldn't be able to do that. And so
Mm.
I reflect forward and I say, well, boy, sure, there's a lot going on right now, and I'm learning these new things, or I'm experiencing these things in a new way. I wonder what's coming next. And so that makes me
Mm.
really keenly aware of my environment.
You're actually, this is really good timing. You're setting me up for the next question because I believe you're already starting to share some of that. Question three is, Raymond, what have you learned about yourself, or what are you learning about yourself as a result of sitting on this comma?
You know, last night was Christmas dinner, and I have 5 children and 9 grandchildren, and sometimes there's 25 people in my house. Last night it was pretty small, it was 8,
Mm.
and that's just because they live all around the country, and you know. But one of the things that my oldest daughter was at one end of the table with me, and my oldest grandson was way down far at the end of the table. And I was talking to my daughter, and I said, "Well, you know what?" I said, "I was going to take beginning in July a gap year," and she looks at me like, "What?" I go, "Yeah, I'm gonna drop out of everything for a year." And just take a get. I think I said because of what's going on and referencing a couple things. I think that I told her, well, I've dropped out of it. My youngest son put his fork down and looked down the table at me like, you done what? Because they've never heard me say, yeah, I'm putting the brakes on the whole damn thing.
Mm.
And I think that's part of the reflection process to say, man, this is not the direction. I could feel very strongly that I could fix this. I could see what's going on. I could battle this, but it's not my battle. And
Mm.
I need to go in a different direction. So I'm still learning to listen to my own intuition, and I'm learning to develop my own intuition, and continue to develop it. I've always relied on it, but to continue to develop it and listen to it keenly. So
Mm.
that's kind of what I've learned. Now I continue to write. These have there's 3 projects I'm working on writing wise, and both of these new projects would not be possible had I not gone through the stages as a writer. So kind of excited.
Hmm. Let me ask you the fourth question because it's a really good kind of build on what you've already shared. As you look back at this comma that you've been telling us about that you were sitting on, what has changed for you as a result of sitting on that comma?
I've become more instantly reflective.
Mm.
I've become more reflective in the moment.
Okay.
Um, I've always been an individual who's present in the present. I've always had that almost that Zen present in the present, right? Um, I'm pretty good at that. I live in the present, and but I become more reflective in the moment rather than reflective um, over time.
What's
So,
important about that to you? What makes that significant?
well, I think it makes my judgment better. I think that, I'm seeing more angles when somebody does something. I'm seeing them almost instantly that I wasn't
Mm,
seeing. I'd puzzle out why you did what you did. I mean, I would figure it out, and it might take me a day and a half, it might take me a month. Now I'm seeing things and I'm becoming much more intuitive and reflective, and it's um in the present. So at the same time, as you get older, your cognitive ability slows down. So at the same time,
mm.
but my brain is slowing down. Apparently, my soul is speeding up, I suppose you could say.
Interesting. Okay. So so you're able to kind of go into observation mode, see things, notice things, observe things in the moment. What does that ultimately end up giving you? And I ask the questions because we can all kind of make assumptions based on our own experiences. But for you specifically, what does that then bring you as a result?
I guess what I'm learning to do, if we were at a staff meeting 10 years ago and we were trying to figure out how to go forward on some project, I could sit down and work out with you step by step how things would progress. If we did this, then this would happen. I could show you the word would be the dependencies, all the things that would go on. I will have conversations now with people, and all that will become, it will become immediately apparent to me. So
Mm,
I will see that this, I could say this to correct this, but correcting the behavior or changing the behavior, going in this direction would depend on so many other things happening. I don't have the time to work them out. It's not my business to work them out. This is a dead end for me. And so I will
mm,
smile politely and move on.
mm,
I suppose that's what I'm seeing more clearly, what I should take action on and what I should not take action on. And I hope that that makes me less disagreeable. Um,
mm,
because see, with disagreeableness, the translation to the external world is overbearing in its worst thing. And so there are people who say he's overbearing. And I
mm,
can't, and I will be overbearing if I think you're doing the wrong thing. If you're absolutely going to go, if you're my 2-year-old grandson, you're running into the street, I'm going to be overbearing. That's all there is to it. That's my job,
mm,
and I'm not, not shy about that. So I guess what I'm doing is learning ways to moderate that disagreeableness in the hopes that, here's how the disagreeableness works the right way. 4 years ago, I went to our local city council and I said, I want to form the 2026 committee, right? And they looked at me and they go, what's that? And I go, that's the committee that will plan the celebration of the 250th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence here in our city. That was 4 years ago.
mm,
Committee now went through, oh, it was a chore. But the committee now, we had our last meeting last Monday. We've raised $50,000. We have a drone show ready to go. We have a band coming in. We have all these things set in these pieces for a great celebration. And we've never done a 4th of July celebration in our town. And so for
mm,
2026 on July 3rd, we're having this big celebration. And so it's all coming to fruition now, right? But I had to push and be disagreeable along the way, to get that, because nobody could see that vision. They couldn't see it in my
mm,
head. Um, so I had to push with that. The disagreeableness worked there. Um, Now, as that thing has matured, it's not going exactly celebration wise the way I want it to go. So disagreeableness is not going to work,
mm,
because now there's 20 committee members, and they've got the pieces. They're getting excited. Things are coming together. And exactly what I wanted to happen is not going to happen. I can see that
mm,
now. But it wouldn't have happened at all had I not been disagreeable for a couple of years. So disagreeableness in the part of sticking to your guns can work. But I think that I know I missed opportunities through my life because I relied on that too much. And
mm.
I think I would like to not miss opportunities.
I hear a couple of things. It's interesting. I also notice what seems like a parallel because, on the one hand, using your words, your disagreeableness is what allowed you to bring something into fruition, give birth to it. And then, kind of like writing a book, right? And then at some point, perhaps the story starts to tell itself, as has now happened with your committee of 20 people. And so the other thing that kind of came up for me as you were talking, it's like what also seems to have changed for you is recognition, restraint, release, and discernment. Like being able to know when you want to step in and be disagreeable, when you want to step out and let others kind of like run with it, and you don't have to own it necessarily.
I think that if I were to take an analogy, as a young man, I mean, in my 20s and 30s, I used an axe.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and over time, that device has gotten smaller and smaller. And for the last 10 years, I've used a scalpel. But I think I could also now, I'm to the point where I can use a laser beam on this. I mean, I can, and that's what I'm really is, I'm wondering to myself, how fine-tuned can I get with all of my abilities? Um, and also, this also comes up too. I told you I went back to school to study because what was happening is I wasn't getting contracts because, well, I'm almost 70 years old and I got 50 years of experience, but there are men half my age with 20 years of experience. And ageism is subtle. They'll see, look,
Mm.
when he was born. Um, and the truth is that men my age generally don't have the technology skills or the language skills or the understanding of current culture that I do. Therefore, they can't operate in it as well as I can.
Mm.
But I wasn't getting work. And so I thought, okay, I thought about this for a long time. What can I do that can turn my age to an advantage? Well, in within 5 years, 30% of the population will be above 65 years old. And so entering into the personal fitness realm at the age of 70 with the right certificates and with the knowledge and experience I have, okay, here's a whole market that's available to me. And
Mm-hmm.
so this was an idea of as I get older, how do I have to adapt to continue to be uh, I'm not going to be sitting in a rocking chair on a porch somewhere. That's not my
Mm.
future.
Mm-hmm.
That might be the last day, but not the future. um, so, how do I how do I reinvent myself again? Because remember, I told you I've retired 3 times. I've reinvented myself each time. What do
Mm-hmm.
I have to do? And I think a sharpened sense of discernment. That's a good word. A sharpened sense of using everything I have talent wise in a more subtle manner. I think the word subtle
Mm.
is what I'm looking for.
Mm.
An
It's
axe is
powerful.
not subtle. An axe is not subtle.
No, well, but and I just love, I mean, everything about that visual, right? The use of tool related to ages in our lives and motivation and kind of outcomes and intentions and so forth. I love it. Let me jump into the last of the five questions, Raymond. So that is simply, what does getting off the comma look like for you?
Forward movement.
Mm,
It's when I get stuck on something, and I end up going, it's always in a direction I did not anticipate.
mm,
And so I think that a comma for me is a crossroads that I don't see. And it's a path that I don't know I have to take yet. And a crossroads may be a bad metaphor because then you'd know you have a choice.
mm,
We get stuck like that. You don't know you have a choice. You just know that you need to stand still for a moment and figure out where you are and where you're going. And my natural inclination is to push through, right?
mm,
That's the disagreeable part. Push through this and get
mm,
and
mm,
conscientious. Let's keep going. Let's keep moving. It is against my nature to stand still and but I've learned, I guess, that reflection and thought is not standing still. It is action in itself, and it can be more powerful action if one is using that to decide what the next move is. So I trust my instincts, and if my instincts for some reason say stop, then we're going to stop.
mm-hmm. I can so personally relate to that, especially when you talk about, inclination is to push through and standing still kind of goes against the nature. And I'm learning this as I get older and hopefully a little bit wiser. But totally, like whenever I'm stuck or, at a crossroads or what have you, I just want to power through. And generally, as you've been describing, like the answer isn't what I can even imagine or picture today. It usually ends up being a surprise. It's something I didn't foresee. And the standing still is allowing other sources and other inputs to come to you when you're powering through with not even a half full tool chest, right? So it's powerful. Raymond, so many stories you could tell, I know, and I appreciate you sharing with us as we kind of bring this episode to a close. First things first, where can people find you? I'll put the links in the show notes so people can just click on those. But if people wanted to follow you, learn more, maybe look into your books, or just kind of generally check in with you, where could people find you?
I have morphed. I've had the same website since I published my first book, and it really was a consulting website. We've morphed that into kind of an author website, and that's hitechcj.com, hitechcj.com. And there's links to the books, there's links to the blogs, there's links to the social media. That really kind of is a hub to come in and check in and see and find out stuff and interact. I'm pretty interactive with people who send me emails or they on social media leave a comment or something.
Okay.
And I do, by the
Last,
way,
oh, go
I
ahead.
keep I keep revision files. So I get emails from people who say this thought stuff from like page 174. There's a typo, and I'm like, oh, thanks, man. Somebody should have caught that before you did, but okay, that's in the file. So I do take all feedback, and I do think about it.
Okay. All right. Good to know. Well, we'll have your website in the show notes. Last thing is something we do with every episode because this whole podcast is about storytelling. It's about lifting up people's voices, giving people a chance to be heard. And your story wouldn't be complete if we didn't give you that opportunity as well. And I call this acknowledgments. And so it's your opportunity to give a voice to boost, lift up, promote others who matter to you. And that could be causes, organizations, it could be other creators, or just important people within your sphere of influence. I'll include any references and notes in the show notes as well. Who would you like to acknowledge today?
So I would like to acknowledge a project we've been working on for 5 years. And can I tell you a little story about it? Does that be all
Sure.
right? We have a few minutes.
Hmm.
So about 5 years ago, I got approached by the Diamond Bar Women's Club because I was the president of the Rotary Club at the time and uh, at the Masonic Lodge. And they had lost a funder for a project they called Making Spirits Bright, which was providing Christmas gifts for junior enlisted families at Camp Pendleton and 29 Palms Marine Corps Base. And so I said, well, we'll hold you a spaghetti dinner and see if we can raise some money, and I'll commit $1,000 to it. We ended up raising $5,000 that night on November 10th, which is the Marine Corps birthday, and then we would do the Marine Corps birthday. Now we just did our fifth annual and raised almost $20,000 that night.
Mm.
Since that time, though, part of what I would do is to go out and do a site visit. And I went out to 29 Palms, and then this struck me. Now I remember because I didn't remember at the time. Um, uh, they have food pantries on almost every major military bases for junior enlisted families because 1 in 5 military families suffers from food insecurity. Uh,
Mm.
22,000 active duty families, 213,000 reservists, and 1.2 million veterans receive federal food assistance. And so we ultimately will create an organization. We've raised 40 tons of food and distributed it to 5 military bases here in Southern California. And we've worked with organizations as far away as Hampton Roads, Virginia, which is the East Coast, and we're on the West Coast. So, feedingmilitaryfamilies.org. You can go there and find out about our food drives or activities. You can go there to make a donation. That's something I still work with. We started that through Rotary. It's going strong. Our next food drive is in March of this year. We do them every 6 months. And We just did a program, lastly, where we collected gift cards through our local Red Robin, which is a restaurant chain here. We
Hmm.
collected nearly $6,000 in gift cards and we gave them out. $3,000 went to the Loma Linda Veterans Hospital to the amputee section. 1,000 went to a place called Hope Through Housing, which has veterans who are they have primary drug and alcohol problems that cause them to be homeless. So it's a housing place for them. And then we gave 1,000 to airmen who stayed home for Christmas at the LA Air Force Base, and $1,000 to the Coast Guard because I'm a Coast Guard veteran and I could do it. Uh,
Hmm.
And that brings back my story of 50 years ago when I came into school for the Coast Guard in 1978. Um, showed up at school. They expected a seaman to show up, an E3, but I showed up with a pregnant spouse. And at that time, our basic allowance for quarters, everything was $275, and the apartment was $240. And
Mm,
so that's why it's a combination of low pay and personal choices that young people make that put them in this bind that we can help them out of. So that's why I do
mm.
it.
Huge acknowledgement to you. I see you and everyone who's helping you with this stepping in. So much I could say, and I will skip, but seeing you stepping in and helping people where the job that pays them does not. So that's just huge. And thank you for sharing your personal story with that as well. Definitely including those links in the show notes and encourage everybody to check it out and contribute where they can. So Raymond, thank you again for coming this week and sharing your story with us and letting us kind of learn a little bit about ourselves through you and your experiences.
Thank you, Paul.
Much appreciated. You have a wonderful weekend ahead, and I will look forward to following your journey. What an honor it is for me to hear and share these powerful stories. I hope you feel the same way. Think about what you learned from this conversation. I encourage you to write it down in some form of journaling or reflection because surprises can reveal themselves to you when you write your thoughts down. If you were moved by today's conversation, pass it along to someone you care about. And if you do discover something you'd like to unpack further, book a call with me and let's talk about it. My links are in the show notes. Be sure to like this episode and follow the podcast here on this platform and all social media at Off the Comma. Feel free to interact and comment. Thank you for listening to this episode of Off the Comma. As always, keep noticing and keep listening.